The Cold Omaha Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalie Podcast, an otherwise fine podcast on the Cold Omaha Podcast Network. I am Giles Farrell. Next to me at the table is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Sporting the Marc-Andre Fleury Pens jersey
Old
for
school.
one last ride.
Vegas Gold.
Ooh, fitting.
Yeah.
When did you buy that jersey? Because there's no way.
I bought this in 200003.
Really?
Yes.
03 still fits.
He was on board from the
Still
beginning.
fits.
Hey, if I don't own 03, people always say
Drop an expletive on you right there.
My mom,
Don't you hate pants?
my mom comes to my house and just throws away clothes that probably are from like 2011, and I'm like, they're perfectly fine.
Oh, no. I have like half of my wardrobe is still from high school. That's how broke / cheap /
I was going to say, I got a little more gut.
Oh, I definitely do, too.
Yeah,
It doesn't fit. I didn't say it fit well. I just said it. I still have it.
It looks fine. I love that. Isn't it Coho or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that-
That's my favorite part about the jersey.
Damn.
It's a Coho jersey.
Damn.
Love me
And
some Coho.
we have a guest with us this week. We actually have two guests, and if you couldn't tell, guest number one is Tom Schreier.
I don't think you need to try to be loud, Tom.
I know. I backed off from the mic there.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
That was
good.
still really heard.
Not as bad as when Tom asked me if it still fit. I think
Yeah.
I got slapped back. I screamed so hard into the mic.
It's a fair and reasonable question.
It was.
I was worried you were going to fly
I'm
over the table,
impressed, too, considering
being
I put on
honest.
like
Can you
70
imagine?
pounds since high school. So, yeah.
I think we're going to see a fight here at some point.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Ben did try to fight me at some point with all the trolling I do on Twitter.
No, yeah. I mean, I guess I try to equal it up, too. But then, Dan comes in and kind of either puts down both of us or one of us and just always ends up in a stalemate.
Well, enough about him. I guess since Tom wanted to join us this week,
Tom demanded airtime.
I demanded airtime.
We're gonna give him the floor
Oh,
because
God.
he's got
nervous.
a take
I'm
to.
nervous, and I'm not the one that has to consume the take.
Ugh,
Well, the floor is yours.
that's a good sign.
So I'm going to start with this. This is my final Mike Yeo take ever.
Oh, God.
Until this is the final one, at least as it relates to his term with the Wild, but it is important to bring it up.
Okay.
It is important to bring this up. Who is the coach of the Nashville Predators right now?
Peter
Oh,
Laviolette.
Do you know where I'm going
Yeah,
with
I
this?
know where
I
you're going
think
with
you know
this.
where
Yeah,
you're
I
going.
know exactly where you're going with
Tell
this.
me I wasn't wrong. 2013, I said Mike Yeo needs to speak to his players after games. I got a whole bunch of harassment from the team. Booted out of the press box. Well, I wasn't booted out of the press box. Told I was never allowed in the press box. If they fire him, tell me. Now, I think it ends up working out because you get, Bruce Boudreau in the end. But Laviolette, who has won a Stanley Cup with the Carolina Hurricanes, which in 3 years may not exist, right?
Right.
This team may not exist.
Yeah.
And went to the finals, I believe, in 2009 with
the
the
Flyers,
Flyers,
yeah.
which were beaten by Chicago, which eventually kind of became this dynasty here.
It was 10, but yeah.
Yeah, 10. That
Yeah.
sounds, yeah. This is the coach who would have taken over for Yeo in 2013. I just want people to know that, and you can make of it what you will. I'm
Yeah.
not telling you what to think.
No,
That is my final hot take.
No,
on
and you're
that.
not the first one that I've heard about that. I had a friend, too, that was kind of on that bandwagon as well, where he would have rather seen Laviolette come in than Yeo continue to coach. And I think a lot of people were, even at the time, a lot of people were warranted in that, in thinking that,
Yeah.
that Laviolette was way sexier of a head coaching option than Mike Yeo.
And it's funny. It's a little bit of, I think in Minnesota, obviously every team treads on hope, basically because the results aren't there, generally speaking. But I think it is fair that sometimes you say, look, whether it's a player, a coach, someone kind of in management, you say, maybe we hang on to someone who we think has higher upside. I think Mike Yeo will be a Stanley Cup winning coach somewhere. In St. Louis, maybe not, but at some point in his career.
Not.
Preferably not. However, I think that team is well cursed. well cursed.
He's got Steve Ott as an assistant now, so he should be fine.
That actually might have been my favorite little clip from your podcast so
Last
far.
week,
It was amazing. But anyways, The point being is I understand. Like, Laviolette is seen, I think, as kind of this replacement level coach that you shuffle in and out if you just kind of need a known commodity. Mm-hmm. But we shouldn't say that about a coach that has won a Stanley Cup, is in it again this year, and was there. I mean, I think I saw some stat early on. I think he's one of the, maybe it's the only American coach, but I think he's one of the only coaches to bring 3 teams this far.
Yeah.
And so I think I always go back to, and again, this is hard because it's NBA, but kind of David Blatt and LeBron. Like, at some point, there's an expectation when Blatt came over that he didn't think he'd have LeBron, and then expectations changed when he came in. I hope hockey fans can follow that.
Yeah, no.
But I think, like, with the Wild, expectations changed when you had Prezi and Suter. And I just think, Laviolette maybe doesn't have the upside. Maybe we'll look back and be like, man, the Wild had this Hall of Fame coach and Mike Yeo. It's just a little too early. But
right.
I think at the end of the day, you just go in without known commodity. And someone with a little more experience, and I think Laviolette would have been a good fit. That is literally it. I'm done talking about this. I'm going to move on to Chuck Fletcher and his infatuation with 30-year-old forwards at some point. But for right now, I'm done with that take. I just wanted that aired out, and I wanted people to know this is why you come to zone coverage for our takes. We're ahead of the curve on everything. We've never been wrong.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have a brief history. That's the nice part.
That's the way to go.
Actually, I will add to this. I didn't know that Peter Laviolette was like waiting for the Wild in Anaheim on a road trip. I think it was Anaheim.
Really?
During that,
I believe it's when he came back. They came back that he would have.
He was waiting here in case the team had a terrible road trip, and Yeo was going to get
and if you look back,
that's how close it was.
This is what the team got. One of the pinpoints of this article that I don't think exists. I was writing for Yahoo at the time. I said, look, if you look at the teams that they took that road trip against, it was all like non-playoff teams. Mm-hmm. And as much as I understand there's a lot of parity in the NHL, we do know which teams are good and which ones are bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there is a big difference. If you can't make the playoffs when more than half the teams do, and I say this about the NBA too, like, your team is not that good. And so, you look back, and I think they just had a handful of really bad teams. And the Wild have always been talented. Now, yeah, it took a while for kind of those young guys to get going, but there's been studies done. Look, a lot of these forwards, it's like by the time they're 23, you kind of got to get going. Yeah. Like, there are a lot of, I think Paul Kariya is part of this study. Like, your boy.
I'm listening.
Your boy. Teemu Selanne, you can go down. Even the guys that last forever in the league, they are hyper productive when they're young. Yeah. And this is why they pluck them out of college and why they, I think junior in Canada, you can't, once you're 21, you're too old for it, right?
Right.
I don't know. That's literally my last take. I just needs to clear the air, and I feel good about myself. I have a problem.
Everyone loves vindication.
I have a problem.
It's just been building up on all the basketball podcasts he's done. It's just there in the back of his mind, and now we finally just let it out.
Let it loose.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair point. I don't know what. I think coaching is weird. Coaching is always weird because you get a guy like Laviolette that's like lying in wait for the Wild job at that time.
Yeah.
And you have no idea you never have any idea where you're going to get out of anybody. Like, at least with players, you can kind of project a little bit. With coaching, it feels like there's just nothing. You have no idea how a team's going to react to a coach.
I think you look at it across sports. I think it matters a lot in football. Like, you just have to. It is a chess match. There's a lot of kind of strategy behind it. And I do think there is a little bit of kind of that will to win that rubs off on the players.
Yeah.
Baseball, there's a lot of just like coaches basically can just take away. And there's very few guys like Tito and like Joe Madden and a handful of those guys that really, I think, do influence the outcome of games. I think a lot of them just kind of need to hold serve, right? And just kind of let the players play.
Yep. And
with basketball, it's tough, although I think basketball coaching makes a big difference. The Phil Jacksons and you go on down the line of guys that really can influence the outcome of a basketball game. With hockey, I think they're like baseball managers. Generally, it's just like, don't be bad, and occasionally you just need a new voice. Like, we love Boudreaux right now. I think in 3 years, people are going to be like, get this joker out of here, right? You know what I mean? I think that, and that's probably even a fair comment. Like, they're just going to be like, we need an adjustment here. You often go from player coach to guys, kind of the rouser or whatever. You go from old guy to new guy, or young guy to old guy,
right.
Back and forth. And I think that's the way it is. It's a tough life being a hockey coach because you're not, it's not like you look at Matt Cullen. Did you guys read the profile on him? Like the I think it was the Star Tribune just recently.
Yeah, where he said this is last year.
Yeah, I mean, at 40 years old, like, he's the outlier, right, where he has older children like this. Most of these guys, I mean, like, most people are just not good at hockey by the time they're 33. I mean, it's not a surprise. They get hit over and over, you know what I mean? And you get slower, and as we were just talking, you put on a little weight, you know what I mean?
I still haven't gotten good at hockey yet.
Yeah, right.
At 31,
right.
so.
Right, and so I think, it's different when you're a coach and your kids are probably older and you're probably moving location to location and all this. So I don't envy the spot. You're under fire all the time, and you're really people only like you in your first year, basically.
You mentioned that the Star Tribune piece on Cullen is probably it for him. And then I read a thing from TSN where they did an off-season outlook for the Wild. Yeah. And one of the moves they had was them signing Matt Cullen. And I was like,
it's shocking.
I don't think that's happening.
It's shocking to me that in that article, he was quoted as being like, I really don't feel the wear and tear. Like, that's why Torrey Hunter isn't playing, for example. Use another local example. Torrey Hunter probably could still play right now. It's just you have to get out of bed in the morning. And you got all these aches and pains and stuff. For a forward in the NHL.
College-age kids, too. I mean, he just had his son drafted, right? Or was a UFA, I think. Or
maybe.
Yeah, I think he was signed.
Sorry, Torrey Hunter, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, his son is a Angels prospect. Was a really good football player at Notre Dame and got
that's
concussed.
right.
Yeah, I remember that hit, actually. Torrey Hunter was there and went down with his wife.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was Texas, maybe. I think the Texas game.
Something like that.
But anyways, that's surprising. And it is just weird. It's weird that guys like Nick Lidstrom, you think probably could, if you wanted to jump into a game today.
Well, look at Chelios.
Yeah, Chelios.
I mean, that guy played till he was, 46 or 45, something like that?
And there's another guy I'm trying to think.
Like top 4 defenseman for 25 years or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys, you feel like they can just lace them up and still. Now, the difference is, can you play 4 times a week, right? I mean, that's kind of, but, yeah, I mean, and like I said, I've it's good that I think we have local coverage in, Pittsburgh and Nashville right now, just because you get the typical. I mean, I always love that Pittsburgh's like, well, no one likes our city. It's like people know what Pittsburgh's about. Like, it's kind of this renovated city that was a steel town, now is more tech and service and whatnot, but also a really fun sports town. I don't know if you guys have been there, but Heinz Field and PNC Park, the baseball stadium, are on the same road basically, and you have all these bars, and then you go right across the river, and you got the console center, and it's sweet. Like, I don't think anyone's saying they dislike Pittsburgh, but Nashville's such a great story right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how do you not love Nashville? Like, this is why you put a team there. It's not a big market. I'll let Giles break my spirit here in a second. But how do you not love Nashville? Like, this is why you put a team there. It's not a big market, right? The Florida Panthers are there because Miami's like the 16th or 15th biggest market. Right. You put teams in Dallas because that's a huge city. In LA and San Jose or the Bay Area, right? Widely, you put the teams in there because you obviously want to get the TV markets.
TV, yeah.
Nashville isn't. It's not a corporate center. It's known for music, right? Yeah. And I think the reason why is look, you can have hockey fans there. Chip Scoggins, a Tennessee native, just wrote in the paper today about how, like, someone he grew up with, I think, was like, yeah, I'm a huge hockey fan. Like, he was just a sports fan, generally bought season tickets in '98 because they were cheap, probably. Yeah. And for the city, it showcases them. Who doesn't want to, other than Giles? Freaking Giles doesn't like Nashville. Well, Giles dropped the take.
No, I think there's a difference. He differentiates between the team and the city.
Because I was like, who wouldn't want to visit Nashville right now?
Oh, we all do.
Yeah.
I do. No, my
I do.
my only reservation with Nashville is they have a noted grinder idiot type on their bottom line.
Well, they have a couple.
Healthy scratch.
They have McLeod and Neal.
Oh yeah,
it's
I forgot
like
about
1A and
James
1
Neal.
It's like they're probably top 10 goons as far as hated.
Thank God McLeod wasn't in Game 5. What a tire fire that would have been at the end.
Oh yeah, he would have sent a message.
Yeah.
Okay, Miller.
I'm surprised that. Look, I've always said a singular fight is always going to be less damaging to a player than a slash, a cross check, a lot of different actions that can take place in a hockey arena. But I'm surprised in today's age that we still have people like this. I know Nashville in '98 said, look, we're going to bring out goons kind of just because we want to show people, we're we're not going to be pushed around as an expansion team. But
yeah, that and they wanted to sell tickets to people who come watch a hockey fight.
Right. Rodney Dangerfield,
don't understand
went
the
to
sport.
a fight and the hockey game broke out. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. No,
It was like the slap shot effect, the Charlton Chiefs effect.
yeah, right.
You know?
But still,
Yeah,
great
old-time
movie.
hockey.
But yeah, I'm surprised. Are you guys surprised that like we still have this in today's game?
Fighting?
Not fighting, because
Oh,
I do
like
just kind
single
of
dimension players?
Yeah, or just goofballs.
A little bit, yeah, because I don't know. I mean, to give Neil a shred of credit, he's not completely one dimensional. He can occasionally play a little bit of hockey. And I think that's just kind of the players that are left. I mean, let's be honest, we all love Derek Bugard, but he was not a hockey player. Like guys like, George Peros was not a hockey player.
Right.
George Laraque, not a hockey player. I don't think there's any guys like that left. I think
it's
that,
like Ryan Clough.
I think that John Scott was the last one.
Yeah.
I think he was the last guy who was like, he could obviously play the sport, but he was not
But
on the ice ever for hockey skills. Like he was, and it was a fitting tribute that he was, the whole All-Star game thing. He was literally the last
Can you
of his
imagine
kind.
the NHL almost messed this up?
Oh, well, yeah.
It's one of those things. That's why I really don't like many sports movies. There's a handful I do, but it's because sports write themselves.
Yeah.
Like this was a funny. It was kind of the end of an era in some way,
For sure. And
it went out like the most hockey way possible.
yeah, he goes in the All-Star game and he scores like 4 goals.
I know.
And he's just like, just a giant middle finger and, to the NHL itself, which orchestrated that goofy trade for So
Right.
anyway, it was just a weird situation. But yeah, I think he was the last one. I think every guy now, and even Cody McLeod, like he is a complete S stain, as we talked about last week. But there's enough requisite skill there to where you can be like, well, he's on the fourth line. He does a little bit of this. He can, at worst, you do sometimes need just a big dumb ox out there to dig pucks out of the corners and that kind of thing. We saw it with Chris Stewart this year with the Wild. Chris Stewart actually does have some decent hands. That's literally the only hockey skill he has.
He's a decent player, though.
He is, yeah, and so, but he's out there for his size. He's out there for his size. He'll throw down a little bit once in a while, but he actually does have like hands. When you give the guy a puck in front of the net, he can actually score. That's all he can do with the hockey puck.
Are you surprised by that too? Like he's known for the Stewie sprint, where he literally chugs a Red Bull and like runs by players. How does a guy like that? Like I have a cup of coffee, I can barely write something with my hand. How does he not?
I think there's ranging sensitivities to caffeine. I think that's what you're dealing with there. Like if my dad had like a sip of Red Bull, he'd probably be in the ER for about a week. But like I have to take one in the afternoon just to get through my work day. I think that's just the difference between people.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on into some Wild discussion. We'll come back to the Stanley Cup Final a little bit.
Sure.
But kind of a running list that TSN puts out. I don't know, they update it like once a week, I think. They have a top trade bait list, and I haven't gone back to previous years to check like how many
accurate
players
they
on
were.
these lists, get moved or whatnot. But the Wild have 2 players in the top 3 on this list. Behind Sammy Vatanen of Anaheim, Jonas Brodin and Matt Dumba come in at 2 and 3.
Well, there's a good reason for that, yeah.
A couple days ago, there was a report from out of Boston that said that maybe the Bruins are eyeing up Brodin from the Wild.
Yeah.
So that kind of opens up the question again of which defenseman would you like to see moved? Because there's kind of different good and bad for each of them, and we've discussed it,
Well, we saw that on Twitter, and it was Pete Blackburn that retweeted Stanley Cup of Chowder, the SB Nation site out of Boston, said something about the 18th overall pick for Jonas Brodin, 18th overall pick and change for Jonas Brodin. And Blackburn said that the Wild would be insulted by it, and some Wild fans are like, that doesn't sound so bad.
No.
Because you kind of think you're going to lose him anyway, right? Like, if you trade Brodin, it makes it really easy. You protect Dumba, you lose, I don't know, Scandella or Holla, or maybe Eric Stahl, I don't know. But it just makes that decision a lot easier. And so there's more layers to that deal than just a straight-up any other offseason you're dealing Brodin for a first-round pick. It's just, it forces your hand on who you're protecting, which is a good thing because then you're not losing him for nothing. And then that's what I've heard the comment from a lot of people is if this team is going to lose Matt Dumba, they might as well trade him because then you're getting something for him at that point instead of just, with this expansion draft, you have to give a guy away. You get 0 in return. except for whatever millions of dollars the owner got from the Vegas fee. But that's it. Like that's all you're getting. You're not getting anything.
The fans get nothing. The fans.
Yeah,
get
the
nothing
fans. Well, the team gets nothing. You know, I mean, the owner got the check in the mail, but that was it. That's literally it. So, I think it makes sense to deal one of those guys if the right deal comes your way, because then you're getting something for him. You can protect the other guy, and then you basically get to point and laugh at Vegas and say, neener, 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 you have to take Marco Scandella. So,
which actually the Wild need. They need a salary off their books, basically, right?
Well, I mean, and then that part doesn't hurt either.
Yeah.
I mean, that's shedding $4 million cap on Brodin and then $4 million cap on Scandella. I mean, you're losing $8 million off the cap, and you've got young defensemen that are cheap to replace them. Yeah, it's not a bad move.
I've kind of come to terms with it this week, or I've made my peace with it, that I would expect them to trade Dumba because I believe he'll fetch way more in return.
Probably.
Because he's still 22, has a low cap hit for another year, I believe, and he has higher upside, seemingly, than Brodin would. And if you're trying to get a goal scorer, which has been Chuck Fletcher's problem for his tenure with the Wild, he's probably a good piece that'll help get you one.
Yeah. We saw his name thrown around in the Drouin sweepstakes last season.
I would not be opposed to that.
And then now I guess the Drouin sweepstakes are somewhat on again, maybe? So
Tampa Bay has to shed some kind of salary.
Right.
And they need defensemen.
Yeah, and he's a guy that's going to get, paid at some point.
So I talked to my brothers in town, as we said off the air. He's a huge Wild fan, and my dad loves Dumba. Is convinced Dumba is Brent Burns, basically.
Okay.
And we had this conversation. So my brother made the claim. He was like, you know what you have in Brodin. He's a solid defenseman. I think you guys have said this on the show before. He really hasn't developed any sort of shot, right?
No.
He's not an offensive threat.
He almost refuses to play offense.
And I don't know if that changes. It might change with a change of scenery. Maybe another coach gets in his ear or whatever. But I really do wonder if you give away Dumba, if we look and you go, that's the next Ortiz Moss. The lineage of Aaron
Brett
Hicks.
Burns?
Right. But I'm saying, yeah, right, exactly. I just already used the Brent Burns example.
No, I mean, I think that's a very fair
who,
comp. Not that I think he's going to be as good as Brett Burns, but it's entirely possible.
And Brodin's not gonna. Brodin, I think, is going to be the same. Maybe he adds a little offense, but that's never his game. I think he's the same guy no matter where he goes.
I think Brodin at his very, very best ever is Ryan Suter light.
Sure.
I don't think he even has as much offense in him as Ryan Suter does, which Ryan Suter doesn't have much offense in him.
Well, I think Boudreau tried to give Brodin as much time, on the power play to see what he could do offensively, and yet he still really wasn't doing anything.
No.
So maybe that's Boudreau now going to Chuck Fletcher and say, okay, I don't really see a lot of use out of him, so maybe you should try and get rid of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do the RNH trade hands down, right? If we revisionist history, wasn't that on the table?
Dumba for RNH?
No, Brodin. Wasn't there a Brodin for RNH?
It was Dumba.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I'd maybe do Dumba for RNH.
Well, it was very tempting.
Because it's both upside, two upside players, and I think it's more which position do you want? Do you want a forward or a defenseman?
The problem with this, and then I brought this up in my article last week about protecting Dumba, about the expansion protection, is that Dumba is a right-handed shot. And the only other right-handed shot you have on the team is Jared Spurgeon. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. You have Jared Spurgeon, you have Christian Foley.
Yeah.
Mike Riley is a left-handed shot. I believe Gustav Olofsson is... I don't even remember.
Left.
But, yeah, I think he's left. So, yeah, you're literally... That puts Christian Foley as a top 4 defender for your team.
Yeah, which is sketchy.
Well, and not that that's the worst thing in the world, but yeah I mean, you've got a glut essentially of left-handed defensemen. You've got Suter, you've got Brodin, you've got Scandella, you've got Mike Riley, you've got Olofsson. You've got a glut. I mean, you need to kind of get rid of one to balance out your defensive lineup a little bit, and so that's why I said for reasons completely not having anything to do with talent whatsoever, I would protect Matt Dumba, and that's why I would probably hold on to him even in trade talks. And I'd be much more willing to deal Jonas Brodin because you've got so many left-handed shots.
I think you have to deal him because really, if then you're just giving away a player that's okay to give away. I think Scandella is actually good and may do better with different scenery, but it's just there's something wrong, right? I mean, there's just something wrong that he's not as good as he was supposed to be, and you probably would rather instead of take that risk that he'd figure it out in Minnesota, you'd say, take it off the books. We need the money to deal with anyways, work with anyways. And if they take Hall, have him. Hall is a fun player. It's a great value.
I think if they end up taking away one of the defensemen, I think that's where we start getting into dangerous territory where Eric Stahl might be taken and then flipped.
Do you worry about that, though? Stahl's 32.
Well,
33.
yeah, but I wouldn't worry about him because I don't think Vegas wants him because it doesn't make any sense for Vegas to draft him. But for Vegas to turn around and deal him, I think absolutely is. And they literally cannot deal him back to the Wild until 2018. By rules.
What does he fetch though? I think he's gonna be 33 this year.
He had a decent year last year.
I know. I'm not taking away. He looked great last year. He did. He really did.
And so if you get a second round pick out of him or a late first out of him, which I think it might be reaching. Okay, so a second round pick out of Eric Stahl.
You're not
if you're Vegas.
Pick,
yeah, you're not getting a first round pick, but a second round pick out of Eric Stahl. Yeah, you're basically getting a free second round pick, and weak draft or not, maybe it's in another year. And
can you imagine that conversation with Fletcher? I can't. He's like, no. I mean, second round pick. I can't. I literally can't. I would. I can't.
Well, and so, maybe, I don't know, maybe it is a situation where, and I'll write about this week and on the pros and cons of protecting certain guys and exposing certain guys, but maybe it is a situation where you pay Vegas to take Eric Hall. You pay Vegas to take Marco Scandella.
The other reason why you maybe, if you're Vegas, want Stahl is because who's going to be the captain? Not that that's super important the first year.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. No, you're right.
Yeah.
I could see that.
I mean, you just kind of have to. They're not going to do the Wild thing where freaking
the alternating captain.
What's his name? Mitchell.
That was a Jacques thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That wasn't even a team thing.
Freaking Willie Mitchell.
But they didn't have a guy. It was a Jacques thing.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, maybe that factors in a little bit. But
sure,
I don't know.
Can't believe you would protect Matt Dumba. The fans are all angry at you now. You keep crapping on the fans.
Turnovers.
And that's the one issue too, though. Who knows if that's just kind of he's young, but that might be part of his game.
Well, and
you don't know.
And it it was our friend Tony from Hockey Wilderness tweeted about this earlier this year. The leaders in defensive turnovers this year were Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns. Okay.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
I wonder what those two have in common.
Right.
Oh, they're the top two candidates for the Norris Trophy. Right. Go figure.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Matt Dumba is on par to be either one of those guys, but I'm just saying that's what you get with that style of play. You get a guy who rushes the puck up the ice like Matt Dumba tries to do sometimes. You get a guy who is not afraid to pinch in like Matt Dumba is wont to do sometimes. You're going to get some turnovers, and I don't think he's just abysmal defensively like some people lead you to believe in his own zone. I don't think he's that bad defensively. We saw worse defensive breakdowns, or I should say we saw just as bad defensive breakdowns as out of Brodin, out of Scandella. We saw him occasionally out of Suter, occasionally out of Spurgeon. I mean, I think he's worse.
Was it Suter that had the drop pass to what's his name, the old Wild player in the St. Louis series?
Oh, Brodziak.
Brodziak. Was that Suter?
Yeah, I think it was. Just brutal. That stuff happens, but when people see it, they've got this weird thing about Dumba. It's the whole, the eye test is just backing up your opinion, and that's why you can't trust the eye test all the time.
Yeah.
Because it just, if you want to see turnovers out of Matt Dumba, you're going to see turnovers out of Matt Dumba. If you want to see turnovers out of Jonas Brodin, you can see turnovers out of Jonas Brodin. That's just the game.
Yeah.
Well, before we get to our next guest, was there any other Wild-related topics we wanted to hammer out on this pod? Because I don't have anything. We have more hockey topics, but
sure.
I think just Wild-related.
I don't think there was any Wild news this week at all. I mean, there's literally zero, absolutely nothing on the Wild front this week.
Except all those promotions.
Oh yeah.
Which just, basically weird job titles that pays more. Just like, well, we're going to give you a raise and...
Good for them.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we had promotions on this podcast, too.
Oh,
I'm now the Chief Executive Drinking Officer.
Stock up, local bars.
Would that make me the head beer milker of the podcast?
And you are the executive vice president of Rambling On.
Oh yeah, no, that's much more fitting. You're right.
See, we got promotions.
You just gotta deal with people's strengths. You got to put them in positions where they're strong, and I feel like these promotions in our podcast have put us in a better spot to succeed.
Unparalleled in his strength.
I don't know. I think I'm in that like age 30 of hockey players era where I'm starting to go down.
Can you imagine?
I gotta work hard in the off season to come back better than ever.
I think you probably are. I mean, it is roughly like mid to late 20s where you hit your drinking like that you start to see the hard decline.
Yeah.
The real hard decline.
Yeah. The hangovers get worse.
Oh yeah. Well, because you were like 26.
27.
You were in your
so,
prime.
Yeah, you're right
Giles,
now,
we're in our prime
and
here.
it's all downhill from here, basically, when it comes to drinking.
Better go all in for the Stanley Cup run in my prime.
Better deal some picks for some help.
Boy.
Pushing the chips.
All right. We're going to get on to our guest here.
Sure.
All right. Joining us today on the Giles and the Goalie podcast is KARE 11 Sports anchor Dave Schwartz. Dave, thanks for joining us. How you doing today?
My pleasure, guys. Other than the fact that it's awful weather, storms and rainy and nasty, it's a good day to be inside, I suppose.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you survive the storms today that swept through the entire Twin Cities area?
It was a little hairy this morning. I live down in Chaska, so we got a little bit of rain, a little bit of wind, and then the storms pretty much blew through after that. So we were okay, thankfully, but it looks like and sounds like some people were not. So I'm grateful that we got to be we're okay.
Yeah, it seemed like there was a lot of power outages, and
Yeah.
I was watching the French Open, which was on Channel 11, and it just
Thank you, by the way.
and it just cut to Blenda every like 5 minutes and be like, "Yo, we got a big storm here in Red Wing." And I'm like, it wasn't a great final. I think Nadal just killed him.
Oh,
but
you crush him in straight sets.
I was like, God damn it! Like, come on, weather. Trying to
Yep.
watch tennis.
Oh, it's funny now because last night they started asking, what time's the Stanley Cup Final start? I said, 7 o'clock. Oh, no, we're going to have a line of storms coming through then. I said, all I can tell you is make sure that you're really cut in for a good reason. If not, people are going to be pissed. People are going to be mad.
So, Dave, I guess as the Wild kind of head into the off season here, which is going to start at some point, whether it's in the next 24 hours or later this week, coming off their first round exit, what do you think they need to do this summer to kind of right the ship here?
Gosh, I think the biggest question is what can they do? I've gone over this in my head so many times, and they have so much money tied up in a couple of guys. It is really hard for them to try to get a huge playmaker, and that's, to me, it's all. And I know that some people don't agree with this, but I've always felt like they needed that playmaker, that guy who can handle the puck. We saw a little bit of it with Granlund this year. Mikhail Granlund played really well, although he disappeared in the playoffs. But he certainly was the playmaker they needed and that they'd hoped he'd turn into. But he's still not, an Ovechkin or a Sidney Crosby or a Stamkos or a Connor McDavid. I mean, these guys that when they touch the puck, it electrifies you. And I just, even for the years, I remember when they would lose every time to the Blackhawks. It's like, you look at Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves or Teravainen or Panarin, but if one of those guys is coming down in the zone, like, you're legitimately frightened when they have the puck. You just don't know what they're going to do with it, and they can do anything at a moment's notice. And then you look down the Wild roster, and what guy on that roster, if he's in the slot with the puck, really, really scares you that they're going to make some amazing move or dazzle you with some dangling and score a goal? They don't have them. They have a lot of really good positional players, but not that just 100% pure score, although I felt like we saw Granlund start to morph into that. So I don't know if they can get that. The other big thing is, what are they going to lose in this expansion draft? And they could lose a really key defenseman too, which could really kind of set them back. So unfortunately, there's a lot of things that need to be done, but I just don't know that they have the cap space to do a lot of things.
When you mentioned the defenseman in the expansion draft, do you have maybe a preference for what the third defenseman they would protect in the expansion draft, assuming that Jared Spurgeon is the second one? Because it's kind of certainly a hot debate on our podcast and on the Twitter sphere as to who they should maybe protect with that third defenseman slot.
I've gone back and forth. I really have. At times I love Dumba and the way he plays. I mean, he's got such a great shot. but he plays so wildly. I mean, sometimes he looks like PK Subban. Sometimes he looks like me. You know, I mean, he's just so far out of position sometimes. But he handles the puck so well. And then you got Marco Scandella, who's got a great shot. Is also a really good stay-at-home defenseman, really strong, but his contract's kind of big. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, I feel like if I'm Las Vegas, I'm going to want Scandella over Matt Dumba. But I think if you're Minnesota, you probably take a risk and let Dumba fly out there in hopes that maybe they don't take him, and you protect Scandella. That's if Scandella's on the roster. I mean, certainly I've heard some inkling that they might try to make some moves so they don't have to make that decision. But as of right now, and certainly with we're only, a week or so away from maybe 2 weeks from the expansion draft, that they may have to make that decision. If it's me, if I'm Chuck Fletcher, if I'm Craig Leopold, I think you got to protect Scandella and hope that they don't take Matt Dumba.
And speaking of the expansion draft, how do you feel about the Vegas Golden Knights entering the league next year?
I think the team name's horrible. I think it's great that hockey is in Vegas, and I'm already trying to pitch a story to get myself out there for a couple days just to see how it goes. I really can't believe they didn't go with like the Las Vegas Aces or something, or just the Knights.
Well, we had heard that Vegas, like the NHL, was very against anything that even remotely came close to gambling.
So there's a shocker.
Which
Gary
is
doing something else,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So, which it's really important. I mean, Aces would have been phenomenal. The Reno Aces are a AAA ball club. It's a fitting. Obviously, it's their industry. It's literally their industry, and it's so weird that they so vehemently put the kibosh.
What are they trying to hide from that? Oh my goodness, people would be gambling on the NHL. They already do.
Yeah,
Thomas Vanek had a huge gambling problem. He was in New York. So it's not like these guys, they're playing credit card roulette at steakhouses that you and I couldn't even afford to roll a bread at. So They got plenty of money and they're throwing it around regardless of whether they're in Vegas or not.
Yeah, and it's not like the NHL gave players a bye week to go do whatever they wanted at home. Right?
True.
So then, I guess as we watch the Stanley Cup Final that's going on, and Game 6 is tonight, how have you been keeping up with it at all, and how are you feeling about Pittsburgh being one win away from going back to back?
I took like a round or two off because I just couldn't bring myself to watch hockey after the way the Wild just got run out of the postseason by Mike Yeo, who I'm pretty sure told his team, just win the first series and I don't care what happens after.
Jake, do it, Jake.
He's doing the Stone Cold Steve Austin on the plane ride home, just chugging beers after they won Minnesota. But I started to watch it again a little bit, and when you have the veteran leadership and guys that have been there before, and that they're just unfazed by the pressure. And that's what it comes down to when it comes. Both of these teams are evenly matched. You get great rivalries between the players. Pekka Rinne is outstanding, except for when he's not. When they go on the road, and then he's horrible in Pittsburgh. He's never won in Pittsburgh, which is amazing to me. But he's never won there. And you got a team full of great veterans, and Matt Cullen. And then you got Jake Gensel, who started. What a season that guy's had. And through the first couple of games, we're talking about him being the first rookie since Dino Ciccarelli to win the Conn Smythe, and now he's kind of gone away a little bit. But they're stacked, and when to win the Stanley Cup, and we've seen it so many years with the Blackhawks, you can shut down the first line, and then it's lines 2, 3, and 4. That's how you win a Stanley Cup. It's with the second and third and fourth lines, because almost always your first line is going to be shut down by their first line. Yeah. And so it's that ancillary scoring and that depth that wins you the Stanley Cup. And you look at the guys that they have, when Matt Cullen and Kunitz and guys who are farther down on the lines that are making the goals for him, scoring goals for him, they're almost unstoppable. There's just no way, because Sidney Crosby and Malkin, certainly Malkin's had his share of goals. They're going to get their goals eventually. So when you add that to the second, third, and fourth line guys that are helping out, you're unstoppable.
Right. And what did you catch NBC special guest analyst Charles Barkley the other night?
Thankfully, no. I heard. You know what? It's great that he loves hockey, but I was like, really? I mean, hockey's not that much of a fringe sport that we need an endorsement from Charles Barkley, who also tries his hand at golf somehow. But it's great. I think it's great that he loves it, and he's their. I don't know what he adds as far as being an analyst, but hey, why not? If he's interested and it spreads the game, great. I just don't think that. And it's not a charity case. It's the NHL. They got plenty of ratings for the most part.
Well,
I was going to say the one upside as someone who's watched both the NBA and NHL is that people should be aware how good this is. Like the NBA, I think you probably get the best team wins it in the end. And the NHL, sometimes you question, is this the best team or is this just the best team in this, kind of playoffs?
Oh, it's so much harder to win. I mean, it truly is. The Stanley Cup truly is the hardest and most grueling trophy to win in all of sports. Right? You look at the NBA Finals right now. You got another super team. This time it's in Golden State. They're going to win. They're going to beat Cleveland. It's not even. There's no way Cleveland comes back. But you got a wild card team, who's by the way who is the best goalie in the NHL this year and maybe the past couple of years. And it's really about what teams can outlast everybody else. It's like a Royal Rumble in hockey. Yeah. Who's still standing at the end. It's not always the team. It's almost rarely is it the team that was the best during the regular season. Just ask the Capitals. How many times they've been the best team and they get run out?
No, I'm good.
It's a sore spot for Giles.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
But I mean, it is. I guess my broader point here is Charles Barkley is a big figure, and it's a different crowd that we just know this from doing shows on the Wolves and doing shows on the Wild. The crossover isn't huge, right?
No.
So I guess the point, and I guess people just choose their sport in the winter. But he is a high profile guy, and if this brings any viewership to the NHL, I think it's positive. I think people would really enjoy it, even if you're not a huge hockey fan. In the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, like I feel like, and maybe it's just because I am a hockey fan. I feel like hockey fans are more accepting of other sports, whereas like basketball fans are like, oh, we're not watching hockey. That's garbage.
Some truth.
Look at the NBA's ratings. They're the best. They're so nasty towards hockey guys. But it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. And you can watch one game one night and one game on another night. It's okay. But, NHL, NBA fans rather, are just they're arrogant. I'm sorry. I watch the NBA. I love watching the Wolves. I love watching the Lynx, WNBA. But I think I've met a lot of NBA fans who it's like it's one or the other. You got to watch one. You can't watch the other.
So reading your bio here on the KARE 11 website, you got the New York Rangers are pretty heavily in on this bio here. So then they're kind of at a unique point right now. They're a team that they could go down or they could make some trades this summer and like go back up again and be one of the best teams in the league. I guess first question is, do you still kind of keep up with them? And if yes, how are you feeling about them right now?
I still keep up with them. I will say I'm much more of a Wild fan now. I've lived here for 10 years, 11 if you count my first job in Bemidji. And frankly, I tried to do a story with the Rangers a couple of years ago for the Olympics, and their PR guys were kind of jerks, so I stopped rooting for them as much. But I still follow them. I still, I'll always love the Rangers, and it'll always be my biggest fear that the Rangers and the Wild will meet in the Stanley Cup, and I won't know what to do. It would just be horrible for me, both personally and professionally. But I still keep up with them. I like the pieces that they're adding. I think the Lundqvist contract is, similar situation to the Wild where they have a couple big guys on massive contracts. Lundqvist's contract is big, and he's going downhill now. I don't think he's been playing well at all this year. So I think they have some nice pieces, but I think they're going to have to trade away some to try to make their team better. And that's just, they have Brady Shea from Lakeville. They got the kid from the Gophers, one of the 15 grandsons of Lou Nanne, who are all outstanding hockey players. Vinny
Yeah, Vinny
Lettieri.
Lettieri, yeah.
They got Jesper Foss. They got the kid, Jimmy Vesey. They have some nice pieces there, but it's just they were so bad on their home ice in the postseason. I want to say they won once or maybe even no times at MSG in the postseason. And they just got torched for it because people were like, we paid $50 million, whatever it is, to come watch this game, and you guys can't even win at one of the best arenas in all of hockey. So they've got some work to do. They've got to make some moves like everybody else. So we'll see if they do it. I don't know. But I feel like I'm probably classified more as a Wild fan now because that's my closest way of getting there. That's the best chance I have of getting close to the Stanley Cup. Is if the Wild win it. So I really hope they'll be the ones that win it next.
I do find it funny with the Rangers. I know some friends who are big Rangers fans just because Minnesota is so well represented on that team. Ryan McDonough, Stepan, Shea. I'm looking up and down their roster. I'm trying to think if there was someone else. But I think in some ways maybe you can get away with being a Ranger fan in Minnesota. They're not going to come burn down your house or whatever.
They haven't yet. But I'll tell you, someday, and it was pretty close a couple of years ago, I want to say that the Rangers, but inevitably someday, I know, because it's just the way it goes, I'm going to the two of them are going to meet in the postseason, and I'm going to have to make my choice. And obviously, as long as I'm working in Minnesota, I'm going to pick Minnesota because I like my job, and I don't want people to come burn down my house. Please.
And you mentioned that they got few Minnesota guys. That's kind of sneaky because everyone considers Florida like Minnesota light in terms of players.
I was going to ask, is there anything else? I mean, there was a big deal like Gensel's one of us, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is there any other team? I mean, you mentioned Florida, but who else would be
Islanders.
in that? Islanders too.
The Islanders have a ton of Minnesota guys. They're Brock Nelson.
Leddy,
they
Nelson,
have Anders Lee, Nick
yep.
Leddy. Didn't they draft Kiefer Bellows, or did he go to Dallas? I'm always forgetting.
I think he did.
I feel like
Riley Tufte went to Dallas. Bellows didn't go to the Islanders.
So they also drafted Brian Bellows' kid, Kiefer.
Right.
He's out at Boston University right now. So and it's not a surprise, right? Trent Platt, who just resigned again as the head coach of Grand Rapids, has been a scout and is still a scout for the Islanders, and I think that's why they keep poaching that guy. I talked to Trent a couple of years ago, and I think it was one of his first or second years at the draft table. I mean, they got Anders Lee in the 6th round.
Yeah.
The 6th round out of high school, and a lot of that is because he had such a great. I'm sure whatever happened between then, he played juniors in Green Bay, had a great career in Notre Dame. It comes out, and I mean, he's just outstanding, and he's so much different than he was in high school. His game matured so much.
So just a few more questions for you here, Dave.
Sure,
and
no
then
worries.
We'll let you go. So we have just kind of some of our staple questions here that we love to ask our guests. And as we're talking about the Rangers, they have one of my favorite jerseys in all of hockey.
Yes.
Their road uniforms are right up there on my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
So I guess the question for you is, do you have one particular favorite hockey jersey from any time, or if you can't narrow it down to one, what would your Mount Rushmore of hockey jerseys be?
Okay. Oh, I love this question. I can definitely give you a Mount Rushmore. I can also give you my favorite. So my favorite, as much as I dislike the team, I really don't like the Montreal Canadiens. But the Montreal Canadian Reds are my absolute favorite jersey in all of hockey.
Yep.
I hate the Canadians, but I love the Montreal Canadian Reds. My second on my Mount Rushmore, just because it is what it is, right? It's the New York Islanders Gordon Fisherman's jersey.
Awesome. That's awesome.
They're so wonderfully hideous.
Yeah. That was so great.
They belong on there because they're the best.
Yeah.
So I really love those. I love, I'm going to forget who it was. I think it was the Ottawa Senators in their Winter Classic when they had the striped jerseys.
Yeah. Yep.
The Senators, I was a big fan of those. And the Pittsburgh, I love those Winter Classic jerseys. But I think, let me take that back. Pittsburgh's off. The North Star jerseys. I love the North Star green.
Yeah.
So that would be my 4, I think.
That's pretty so being a member of the local media, have you gotten a sneak peek at the new Wild sweater? And if you were on a podcast with not a lot of listeners, would you care to divulge any of that information that might have to be off the record?
Well, I would be happy to because it seems like a lot of times I don't have listeners or viewers, whatever I'm doing. So I'm glad to do it. Yeah, actually, I have heard, and I have a pretty good source that does some dealings with jerseys in the NHL. That the new home jerseys will be the Reds jerseys.
Really?
There will be a slight tweak to the design, I believe, of the logo.
What?
So
Wow.
I think the green ones go away.
Yeah, because they can only have one
Right.
color jersey.
For the first 5 years, then they'll bring the third jersey. Then they're bringing the third.
Everything that we've
back.
been hearing had said that it was going to be the green. I mean, even up to like Michael Russo reporting on the green.
No, then I'm getting confused. You're right. It's the green one. I'm sorry. I'm getting confused.
Okay, you
So
scared
the
us for a
red
second
ones
there,
go
Dave.
away.
Jeez.
No, my fault.
My God.
No, the green ones stay. The red ones go away. There's going to be a slight tweak to the logo, and I have not even been told what the logo is or what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that I get a sneak peek from my source before the season starts. But I know that that's right. The reds go away, the greens stay, and the whites will be the aways. But then, from my understanding, within a couple of years, like either 3 or 5, the third jerseys will come back again.
Yeah, it might be even sooner than that.
It might be. You never know. And
knows?
so, and you'll be able to basically get, Adidas will make the authentic jerseys, and you can buy those, or Fanatics, which I believe it'll be a different jersey. It won't be an Adidas jersey. It'll be a different, it'll be the replica, but it won't be an Adidas one.
Well, they're releasing the jerseys are actually being released next Tuesday.
Are they?
They're having a party at Wynn in Las Vegas, of course.
Of
and
course.
they're going to be doing.
the Golden
I
Knights.
don't know if it's going to be like some weird kind of like slap shot fashion show or
Charles
something
Barkley
like
will be
that,
there,
or
like paint off desks.
yeah, Barkley will be in the house, of course, and then
Wearing
they're
one of
going
the
to
jerseys.
unveil them to the public, I believe, at the latest at the draft. Which
Okay.
is
Yeah,
later
sure,
that week.
that makes sense. They'll probably present them to their draftees when they get selected. Well, that seems like a good way to get myself out to Vegas. Maybe I'll pitch that story.
There you go.
So our second to last question here is, do you have kind of any like behind the scenes story that obviously you could share, kind of Wild related? Because I mean, when we had Chad Graff on, he gave us a story about finding Ilya Bryzgalov in a
That's right.
Pittsburgh bar, kept reading Russian politics.
On a tablet.
That sounds so like Briz. Yeah, absolutely. So do I have any good behind-the-scenes Wild stuff? Oh, jeez. As far give me a little more guidance on what specifically you're looking for.
I mean,
Let's
is there
start
any
with that.
is there any just like funny or like feel good story that maybe a player did? Something along those lines. Like,
the guys they're all really good when it comes to that kind of thing. I've gotten to know Jason Zucker pretty well over the years. And even in Ryan Suter too. In fact, that's the one I remember when we were visiting. They were visiting a hospital one time. That was last year, and Ryan was there, and Darcy Kemper was there, and I remember Ryan. They'd gone into a room, and he literally, I think he was only supposed to spend maybe 10 minutes, and he was probably in there for about 25 to 30 minutes. Just chatting with him, chatting with the young man who had been dealing with something and his family, and it just kind of made their day. And I ended up writing an article about Brian and Let's Play Hockey Magazine. I do some writing for them during the season, and he's got a lot of big ideas about wanting to do charity work and help with youth hockey, both here in Madison. His dad, who tragically passed away a couple years ago, was big on that. His dad was on the 1980 U.S. Olympic team that won the gold, and the gold medal basically sat in his sock drawer, except for when the kids. Yeah, I mean, his dad it wasn't a big deal to him. He loved the fact that he won the gold, but what he really loved was running the rink and working with the kids. And Ryan loves to work with kids, and he's got some big ideas that he's still working on. And asked me when he told me them in the article, since he was still working on them. They're not. He didn't want to get it out there yet, but he's got some really big ideas on how to make and how to help hockey become more affordable for kids who can't play it. And I know that's a big one for him. And a lot of those guys are really great. Zach's great about it. They're all. I don't think any guy on the Wild roster that I can think of is just really doesn't do great charity work. But I remember that. I remember I had a really fun story actually with the equipment staff when a couple of years ago, the Wild were in Chicago for one of their many, many failed postseason series with them. And we were there. Again, I love Chicago and hate Chicago. I love going to the city, but I absolutely detest the Blackhawks. Everything down to their PR staff, who are the worst in hockey, by the way.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. I got stories for you. I'll tell you another time. But we were there, and so we did a story on how fast the equipment staff turns over the locker room. Because basically their job is to take, for all intents and purposes, take the home locker room and make it the away locker room so that guys can get what they need. And they have this big cart full of different kinds of gum and mints and everything, because everybody likes their different kind of gum, and hockey players are very superstitious. So, so-and-so, someone might chew juicy fruit, but the other guy doesn't chew juicy fruit. He likes Big Red, so they have to have Big Red stacked. And and Tony DaCosta, who is the head equipment guy, was sharpening skates. And I said, do you know what every guy likes? And do you know, the concavity they like on their blades? He goes, oh, yeah. I said, Mikko Koivu. And I just start rattling off players, and he's rattling off exactly how they like their skates. Oh. Like to the eighth of an inch of how much of a concave they like from their one side of their skates to the other. And he knew all of them, just like it was nothing. It was amazing to me how many people it takes to make this thing that is the Wild run smoothly. And they have so many people who do such great job behind the scenes to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And that always amazes me. And I love those guys. I still, I see them all the time. They're great. They crack me up, and they work hard. They work really hard to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So I think that's probably some of my best stories, other than the time that Matt Cook tried to make sure I didn't get a chance to interview Mikko Koivu. And I'm good friends with Matt now that he no longer plays. Yeah. It was in St. Louis, and Aaron Sickman, the PR guy, brought out Mikko for us to need to get an interview. And Matt Cook, who is a pretty intimidating guy. I mean, even without his pads on, he's built like a fire hydrant. He's a big dude. And he goes, "Did Sicky approve this interview?" I said, "Yes, sir, he did." Okay, and then he just keeps walking away. He's just giving me crap.
You're lucky you didn't go knee on knee.
No, not with him. No. Let me tell you something. I wouldn't go anything on anything with Matt Cook. I mean, that guy is a beast. But he is one of the. It was really. We played in a charity game together this year, and my 5-year-old daughter was in there, and everyone who thinks that Matt Cook is this really nasty enforcer beast guy, he's literally one of the nicest and softest and kindest human beings you'll ever meet. Huh. He's got a bunch of kids. He's dad of the year now. He travels the country because his son's is a very good baseball player. And here he is in the locker room with my daughter, putting her pink sparkly shoe on his head, pretending he doesn't know where it is. And I snapped this picture. It's like, yep, here's your NHL tough guy, Matt Cook, with a pink shoe on his head. So,
great.
Good times.
All right, so the last question I have for you, Dave, is it's kind of another weird argument that we have on this podcast.
Good, I love these.
You're going to like this one.
But
oh, God.
What is your stance on soup? Can you eat soup standalone as a meal, or is soup always on the side of something for you?
Oh, this is the Kenny Banya Seinfeld episode, wasn't it?
Yep.
Soup's not a meal, Jerry. It doesn't count. I only eat soup when I'm sick, and I usually just eat it by itself. But that's not true, though. I guess it can be either. Am I allowed to take that stance, or do I have to go one way or the other?
I mean, that would certainly be a first on this show, because usually everyone will just pick a side, but that would definitely
yeah,
be
usually
a first.
it gets very intense, and there's tempers flare.
Now the other part is it depends on the soup. Because like chicken noodle soup, you're talking about I'm probably eating that because I'm sick, and that's a standalone meal. But my favorite is New England clam chowder, which usually precedes some sort of seafood meal. So you start with the clam chowder, then you move into something else, and then you roll yourself away from the restaurant after. But so it kind of depends on what I'm eating. How's that?
I think we can allow that. We can allow that. It is a very complex issue. That's the beauty about that question. It's such a complex issue. People
really
bring
is.
up
I mean,
chili, and if that's different stews, they don't really know if that's a soup or
Wait
not.
a second. Chili's not soup.
No, yeah, and then we've had people bring that up. Like, well, you can eat chili alone. It's like, well, yeah, but
Because
chili's
if
not
anyone
really
thinks
soup.
chili's soup, I'll argue with them.
Oh no, yeah, we're on your side with that one, Dave. Trust us, we're behind you 100%.
No way, chili's. I love chili's a meal. It's done right.
Agreed.
All right, I think that can do it. Dave, is there anything you'd like to plug before we let you go, or just have people watch you on KARE 11?
Please watch so I can be gainfully employed. That'd be great, and keep getting paid to cover hockey and other sports for a living. I'm a very lucky man that I get to do that. So I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Snapchat, kind of, when I figure out what it is. I Snapchat my 17-year-old nephew. He's 19 now. He taught me Snapchat, but I can't do Snapchat like he does because I'll get in a lot of trouble. So I'm still learning how to say. I'm still figuring it out.
All right.
I don't even like to look at his Snapchats anymore. I'm like, I better not see this. Then I'm going to tell your mother, and that's just not a good thing.
Yeah, I'm no Snapchat expert by any means, and I'm terrified of what people younger than me do with
You
with
should
Snapchat.
be terrified. I know what it is, and I am terrified. And I choose not to look at it sometimes just because I'm afraid that it could be brought up in a court of law at some point that I saw something I shouldn't.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that. There's a
that'll-
database somewhere. I know there is.
That'll be the
No,
day
not
when a Snapchat gets used in court.
Oh, nothing ever goes away on the internet. Everybody thinks that it
No,
does.
no.
It never does.
No.
And sometimes, a lot of times, even if you make a mistake for 7 seconds, there's always some person on Twitter who saw your mistake, screen grabs it, and says, "Oh, you stole something wrong, idiot." That's why I deleted it.
Yeah.
But there's always someone who catches it and likes to throw it back in our face.
Exactly. Never
Love
allowed
to
to
do it.
make mistakes.
No, of course not.
All right. So, Dave, thanks for taking some time out of the day to jump on with us. We'll definitely be watching you on KARE 11 for the sports coverage, and hopefully we'll have you on again down the road.
Please, this was fun, man. I enjoyed it. I look forward to talking more hockey, jerseys, and soup.
That's the entirety of our podcast, by the way. So,
but you have the market cornered on it. So
we do. We found a
Yep.
great niche.
Yep.
That's important.
So, all right. Yeah, Dave, thanks again for joining us,
thanks.
and we'll talk to you again soon.
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Good. All right. Thanks to Dave again for jumping on with us.
That was tremendous.
That was great, and I think you and I just about hit the floor when he said Gortman's Fisherman.
We all did that. It's weird though, those '90s third jerseys, man. They evoke such, like, you don't have anybody that has a bland take on those '90s third jerseys.
Was that the era? Have you guys seen the 30 for 30 on the Islanders where there was the guy who bought? That was the era. I mean, that's so perfect.
Yeah,
it's so perfect.
Well, and it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't just like it was his crackpot idea. It was the entire NHL was doing goofy stuff like that.
Yeah,
and that's what made it great.
The Lightning one and the Ducks
Lightning one
one
was awful. The Ducks Wild Wing is like on the holy grail for me and Giles because there was only like 7 of them made, so they're like $1,000 online and stuff. But
Giles owns one. Appreciating value. It's like Giles' first
it's his retirement plan basically.
Yeah. And then,
was there any other really bad ones like that? I'm trying.
Well,
to
the Burger King is notorious.
The Burger King.
The LA Kings Burger King.
The NHL still, like the Sens. Do you remember the Sens jerseys and the Bolts jerseys? Like they still can't get away from just really bad jerseys.
Right. Do you remember the Flames jerseys when they had the dragon head?
Yeah, and the Uter Moose or whatever.
Mooterus.
Yeah.
Can't forget that. That wasn't even '90s, but yeah, that's a. very forefront in this
even
podcast.
the Dallas Stars today, I really do not like those jerseys.
No,
never
we
have.
talked about that.
Yeah.
I'm not.
They're
a huge
bland.
fan. They're very bland. Yeah, I don't like the logo. The jerseys is like, it's not bad, but the logo is it's very high schoolish to me. It feels very.
Yeah.
I don't know, just like they paid a very, very, like an intern graphic designer. Like, here, hey, throw something together with a D and a star.
Yeah.
So getting back into the Stanley Cup Final, we're recording before Game 6,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously there's a chance that could be it for the series as
Right.
Pittsburgh can clinch. And I was disappointed with how Nashville played in Game 5.
I think everyone was.
They were just...
I think even Pittsburgh was.
And
They're like, come on, guys.
Come on, really?
Pittsburgh fans weren't even
We showed up.
expecting a win.
Right.
As it was tweeted out, I forget who tweeted it out, but ticket scalpers were selling them for
Russo.
half a face.
Russo was talking about that. He $600 tickets going for half, which that's I retweeted and said, well, that's what you get for charging $600 for a GD playoff ticket. Like, come on, that's just out of control.
And how terrible must it be to be going to back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals and you don't even give a hoot for Game 5?
Well, I think it's just they've had enough success there, and that it's not super special to them to where they're not going to shell out that kind of money. I mean, would you rather watch it with your friends in your house for free?
It's what I told you guys. Like, literally, it is a sweet sports town. Like, there are between the two, the baseball stadium, which really overlooks the city right across the river, and this console center. Like, there's just 100
it's
bars.
PPG Paints Arena.
Well, yeah. And
Is it?
Yeah,
It's not
changed it
console anymore.
No, they changed
changed
it.
it.
PPG Paints. Huh?
Yeah.
And I was going to say too is, people in Nashville are, they can pay off, loans with the money they're getting for Stanley Cup Final tickets, and then they just go into a bar on Broadway to watch the game.
I'm shocked you didn't go, Giles. I feel like this is like your your place. Like, when you die, you'll end up in Nashville.
If Game 6 would have been Saturday instead of Sunday, I contemplated going.
Do you know the drive? I know someone who drove to Memphis. I think it's a hike. But
It is. I just had a buddy that moved back this weekend.
Okay.
It's a drive.
Yeah,
I do have relatives that live down there, so I could.
Oh, there you go.
I could.
I'm shocked,
stay.
actually.
Yeah.
That just makes it more surprising.
But I'm with them. I enjoy watching. Shockingly, I enjoy watching a game at a nearby establishment by the arena, and especially during the playoffs, it's a great time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you expect out of Game 6 here? Because
I talked about this, and right before I started watching Game 5, I was talking a little bit with my girlfriend about it. Actually, like kind of laying out what had gone down in the series. I'm like, I think either way, no matter what happened in Game 5, I thought that Nashville was still going to win at home. Because it seemed like there was some kind of like aura around the Bridgestone Arena, like that crowd transforms this hockey team, and we really saw it because they fell absolutely flat on their face in Game 5, and home ice advantage in hockey probably doesn't get maybe as much credit as it deserves.
No, people completely disregard it.
Right, and like because they couldn't get the matchups on Sidney Crosby, and he dominated that game. You can say what you want about the whole him and Subban situation. We can get into that, but he dominated that game. Him and Malkin, took over, and so it was really just. They just mopped the floor with the Predators, and I think I don't think it's gonna be like that in reverse for Game 6 necessarily, but I think there's enough energy there. There's enough support there, and obviously the matchups are huge because in Nashville they shut down Crosby and Malkin in Games 3 and 4, and that's huge. Obviously, that's how you beat the Penguins. So. And Murray, just like Rinne in reverse, didn't play very well in Nashville, even though he's been playing phenomenal in Pittsburgh. And Rinne, the goalies have kind of flip-flopped. Like they played, both of them played really well at home and kind of crappy.
Especially the Nashville crowd treats goalies kind of like it's like
yes,
high school.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the best part.
Like high school or college.
And I'm not ready to say that's the reason why Murray doesn't do well in there. But it is it's obviously there's something that he doesn't play well in that building or on the road in general. But. So I expect to win. I'm always team Game 7. I've said this, and I'm wearing a Penguins jersey today more out of jest than anything because I actually own a Marc-Andre Fleury jersey, but
from 2003.
Yeah, from 2003. But yeah, I think I fully expect the Predators to win tonight and to see a Game 7 on Wednesday, which is awesome because we haven't had one in 5 years now.
It's been a while since the Boston-Vancouver series.
Was that the last Game 7?
I think so.
Okay.
Oh, that turned out well for Vancouver, the city.
Well, and
Every time they lose in the Stanley
I'm
Cup Final, that's what happens.
I'm kind of reserved about tonight's game because in Game 5 we were expecting Nashville to just steamroll Pittsburgh.
I wasn't.
Well,
but,
and
yeah.
it seemed like Nashville had gained enough momentum to where
Sure,
they were
that's true.
finally gonna
Yep.
win Game 5 and then win Game 6 at home because obviously. But we saw Pittsburgh just completely put it into a whole nother gear that only championship caliber teams ever find. And now I'm worried if Nashville will be able to match that because you know where you're going to see it in Game 6 tonight, whether it's Crosby or Malkin or Kessel or Gensel. I'm going to say Pittsburgh wins tonight. That's it.
I also say that for two reasons. A, we can't have good things in sports. We really do. We do want.
Tom, let me tell you about that.
I mean, again, not to harp on the NBA, but I was like, all I want is either a good series or to see the Warriors win 16 straight. I don't want this stupid 5-game thing that we're going to see. With hockey, I think we do. I would love to see the Stanley Cup winner in their own arena. And I understand that there's probably fans from both sides in each place, but it's just different when it's your own crowd, and it's not. There's something kind of bittersweet, even just as a neutral observer, that you're like, yeah, like the team loves it, but everyone else around them's like, F this, man.
So a fun fact that I didn't know, I believe Chris Creamer pointed out today, Penguins have never won the Cup on home ice.
Really?
Never. The
That's
one time
why-
it was won in Pittsburgh was when the Red Wings beat him in 2008.
Jeez.
So they have never won a Cup in Pittsburgh.
So my prediction, looking a lot better now.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the other thing, too, is a lot of hockey is just kind of how loose these guys are. And you got to think, like, Pittsburgh kind of goes into this being like, of course they want to win it. But I think you can play looser when you know you have an extra game if you lose this one.
Well, I believe that's what Dave said. They've been there before, So
And you
it's
just imagine they have players that can just flat out score, and it's going to just scare the hell out of everyone in that arena if Crosby just burns through a defenseman and
Which he
scores,
did
right?
in Game 5.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of the Penguins not winning on home ice, do you remember the first time they won the Stanley Cup?
why you got to bring that up, Giles? Why-
Somebody-
you're a
some-
hateful man.
why you
I think
doing
it
that?
was Molesky tweeted that Game 5 reminded him of another Penguins Stanley Cup playoff game, and he
Oh,
posts
God.
the YouTube of Game 6
like
of the
8-0,
91
right, or
Cup
something?
Final. Yeah,
Yeah.
8-0,
Jeez.
which
It's crazy to
which
think the
was grand-
Stars were in the 91 Stanley Cup and left in 93.
that was one of, I think Down Goes Brown did a piece on one of the most like Cinderella playoff teams of all time, and I think that North Stars team was
Oh,
like
they
number
were
4.
They were terrible.
They were
And-
awful, and then they just steamrolled through.
And also,
everyone.
I looked this up the other night. I was looking up how many goals have been scored in a Stanley Cup Final game because obviously
I
Pittsburgh was
saw
approaching this.
I didn't want to retweet it because it had an excessive amount of profanity in it.
What the f*** are you talking about?
Man, I have to edit this.
I'll edit it.
I put a marker in. I knew it was coming.
But anyway, so what I tweeted with lots of profanity, the Stars still hold to this day the record for power play goals in a Stanley Cup playoff. They played 23 games and they scored 35 power play goals in 23 games, and that blew my mind. Like, it's just especially thinking about I can't even say love-hate, the complete frustration and hate-filled relationship that we've had with the Wild power play for how many
I
years
was
now?
going to say, did the Wild score 35 power play goals this year?
This season? I don't know if they did this season, but the North Stars averaged like a goal and a half on the power play there during that entire run. I mean, that's how that's a huge way to completely dominate a special teams facet like that.
Only other Stanley Cup Final thing I had was Charles Barkley. We kind of got into it with Dave.
Yeah.
Kind of let him have the floor. But what did you guys think of Charles Barkley on the NHL broadcast during Game 4? Because I purely enjoyed it because you could visibly see how uncomfortable Mike Milbury was, which was pure enjoyment for me.
You should just
But
get into every broadcast.
Yeah.
Also, this is a great example of you can do a good broadcast. TNT has their NBA broadcast, I think, can be widely enjoyed. You don't have to be a diehard fan. Ernie Johnson's a great. I don't know if you guys have even seen this. Like Ernie
Johnson. He's good.
Ernie Johnson's a great moderator. You have these old players, but they have personalities. Shaq and Kenny the Jet and Barkley. The NHL's missing something there.
Yeah.
I mean, they clearly are. I've heard Jeremy Roenick's a great guy off the camera. I think his takes are terrible. Milbury's just kind of a joker. Like they really need a refresh there.
I think Wyshynski had a good point on Roenick, was that when he's like in studio and you're making him doing that, he's not that good. But when you get him out into the field doing other things, he's good. Like he can be entertaining, but they keep him in studio a lot, which I don't know, is again the NHL and NBC just being in their own way.
What? Yeah, I just think they haven't freshened up their crew at all either. I mean, NBCSN has been running with the same guys behind the desk for how long now? I mean, we've been subjected to Milbury for what feels like decades.
Taking life out of my years.
Right, exactly. And Roenick, same thing. Like you guys said, I don't really like him behind the desk at all.
Yeah.
Keith Jones, I can kind of take or leave.
Yeah, I'm fine with him.
He's fine with me, but it's just the same. He's the same. He's the same
just
guy.
Bland.
He's just there, yeah. And so it's just like, and I think NHL Network has done a slightly better job of this, and it's something that I really like about MLB Network, is that they're not afraid to put they have Pedro Martinez on. What more could you ask for to have Pedro Martinez on?
No, and they do a good job coaching these guys up. I mean, Rodriguez is an MLB Network, but they found out a way to make Rodriguez and Pete Rose and Tom Verducci
just different voices, different generations, different levels of of involvement with the sport. And I just feel like NBC hasn't done that at all. Like, at all.
Also, and you are like the number one source for most people, because ESPN has
like the only source. Yeah,
right. I mean, ESPN has kind of burnt their NHL bridge
for sure.
TSN is a Canadian network,
right?
And I mean, I'm trying to think what else would be like the.
Well, I mean, there's NBCSN and NHL Network, and they are separate entities, but they do work together a little bit.
And supposedly NBCSN would be the only like neutral non-league.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So
yeah, and so there's no one else, and it's just like there's so much room there where they could take. I mean, look, you mentioned it, Ilya Bryzgalov.
Oh my God!
Unfreaking believable
for that.
Would that be to have him on it?
He'd be so good.
And I realize he's maybe a guy that you do in small doses.
Yes.
But just have him do a segment.
Also,
why the Players Tribune struck gold with that.
I mean, people are going to go nuts with some of these names I'm bringing up, but you brought up the MLB. Chris Archer was great. AJ Pierzynski was great. I know some people here aren't thrilled with him, but I'm trying to think. They bring in these former players, and I really think they offer. You can look at it locally with, again, Torrey Hunter every day. Probably don't want to do that, but he's great in that segment. They're going to bring Kadire on. They got LaTroy Hawkins, Roy Smalley. Like, when you get multiple perspectives like that, it's nice to have the Smalleys who've been doing it for years. It's also nice to have a Torrey Hunter that played against these players that he's viewing, right?
You can tell stories about the guys actually on the field on like Burt Blyleven.
Right. So my point being is that I think they should. They're great hockey personalities. We heard Dave talk about the Wild players specifically.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want Zach Parise on there, or why wouldn't you want some of these guys that have were defeated along the way? Talk about Nashville or talk about Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, that's something that MLB always does. They always bring in a current player to do their playoff coverage. I've never seen that. Well, I mean, I've seen that a little bit in hockey, but not nearly as much as they should be doing.
NBCSN did it for a little bit at the beginning of the Stanley Cup playoffs, where they brought in Shane Doan.
Yeah, well, he's pretty much retired anyway.
But he's been in the league long enough. I think he has good perspective.
He's a great guy, and he's a great example of that.
I don't know if, maybe I just don't pay attention to the Coyotes, which is fair to say.
Yeah, most people don't.
People in Phoenix.
I haven't heard of like Shane Doan, having like a whole lot of like personality to like put him on the air like that.
Yeah.
Like when you're putting guys on the air, you want them to have like personality, something the NHL also hates. As we're seeing with
Heather
PK
Rose
Subban.
Yeah.
As they've hid him from the media for the last 3 days.
Well, that's the team. Actually, that's the Predators.
But I read that the NHL runs the PR teams in the Stanley Cup Final.
Wyshynski was tweeting about it. He was live tweeting it basically today. He's like, "This is bizarre. The NHL lobbied with the Predators to talk to PK, and he won't come. They won't allow him out into the locker room." So I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, as much as we love to blame the NHL because they are at fault for 95% of the issues in the league, this seems to be a Nashville thing. And I don't know if it's
then that's the
exception
to
the
NHL
rule, right?
Still hates having personality. They just, I don't know.
Well, and a guy like, so we were Brian Reynolds last week, and he told us a story about George Peros, and not expecting George Peros to be like basically like an economic genius as they're having this conversation during the NHL lockout a couple of years ago. What a great guy I mean, he's obviously in the media still. I think he does a podcast with someone or something, but he'd be a perfect guy. I mean, is he a former face puncher? Sure, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't know things about the game. He obviously was in an NHL locker room for almost 15 years or something like that. And if he's a smart, intelligent guy like that who can speak, why aren't you knocking down his door to get some insight from him?
It'd be
He's
great.
a personality too.
It would be great to have like a goalie who was beat by one of these teams.
Sure,
profile everyone. Yeah. If Subban, if Nashville had gone out, he'd be a great guy to have behind the desk.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't have to be someone electric like him. It really just someone with knowledge would be nice.
Right. And there's plenty of guys with personalities, and they just like I said, MLB does a great job of it every season. It feels like there's always a current player at the desk, for an MLB playoff series, and it just the NHL. I literally haven't seen it this year. I think you're right. I did see Doan on a couple of telecasts in the first round. That was it. That was literally it. And I haven't seen it in the last 3 rounds. It's like, well, you're missing.
All right. Just a few couple odds and ends things before we get out of here. So it's going on a while here.
Hour 20.
News. Little newsworthy thing today was from Larry Brooks. The New York Post wrote that the NHL cap next year is going to stay flat as the players don't want to use the escalator because of Las Vegas coming into the league. Mm-hmm. And that will just cause, problems.
It'll mess up the escrow, I believe.
Well, and it just, again, teams were told that, this was the projection for the cap to continuously go up. And now we're at a point where the cap is going to remain the same. And I think even last year, the cap was $71.5 million, something like that. So it wasn't. So it wasn't like it was going up a whole lot. Right. And you have teams who, under the impression that the cap was going to continually go up,
I was going to say
big
teams
contracts.
That may have signed mega deals to 2 players,
like the Kane and Taves deal.
Oh God,
which were signed under the expectation of the.
We want these players to stay in the markets that they started with, right? And you want marquee players, and this is just Sorry, go on.
But I mean, now maybe that factors in to the Wild's protection list, because say maybe you protect Dumba, who has a small cap hit, and you leave guys with bigger cap hits exposed, so you can get one of those off.
No, that was another point I brought up last week, is that his cap hit is $1.5 million less than Scandella and Bodine, and that's nothing. I mean,
you don't want teams making these decisions like this, though.
No, and
how do we save money?
And that's the problem with, we always complain about the NHL and how terrible they are at their job and how terrible they are at promoting their product, because they are. They're bad. And this is the byproduct of that. This is where you don't see increasing revenues because they're not growing their sport. They're more concerned about trying to attract casual fans by making goofy rules to try to inflate offense, and then they have offsides reviews that take away half the goals that are scored. And it just this is what happens. This is the people may wonder why we rag on the NHL and how they do business so much. This is why. Because now it is affecting your favorite team. Now it is affecting your favorite sport, because they can't keep the players they want on teams. They can't keep good teams together because of their inability to promote the game and make money.
Yes.
CEO of drinking, everyone. CEO.
You do that once a week, where you go on, and I get lost in space.
I derail you with my own rambling.
I come back when you're done, and I'm just like, I have spaced out.
At some point, I know I need to shut up, and then I look over at you, and you are just staring at me like, oh crap. Most of the time, I think I said things that you wanted to say, and other times I just completely derailed you. So
apparently, I just need to take the contrarian points to whatever you're saying, just I have something to say.
We can make this undisputed, is what you're talking about?
God, no.
No, Tom?
Actually,
that had a 0.0 rating in the Twin Cities.
Actually, we probably have as many listeners / viewers as Undisputed.
You're probably right about that. Yeah. That's scary.
All right. Do we have anything for jerseys, or we're just going to build up?
No, we talked jerseys a little bit with Dave, and that was great. And we're secretly planning a probable special podcast about jerseys when
people probably expect that out of us.
It would be very on brand. Yeah.
That's our brand.
Yes.
So,
jerseys and drinking.
Look, yeah.
Soup.
Yeah.
Dave nailed it. Hockey, jerseys, soup.
Yep, that is it. And then the last thing I have was, as you heard in our intro, was a tribute to Adam West. Passed away on Friday night, announced Saturday. And I don't know. I tweeted out the Batman rankings from way back in episode 36, I believe it was. And I noted on Twitter yesterday that I left out Kevin Conroy, who voiced Batman in the animated series.
Right.
And that was an error because I thought he's really good.
Yeah.
But, back to Adam West, as I said in that previous show, I haven't seen a whole lot of the original Batman, but, he, that was kind of the gold standard, and he, it was, I don't know, groundbreaking, I almost want to say at the time.
Kind of,
but,
yeah.
That was sad.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'm a titch older than you guys, but I remember watching a lot of Batman old reruns. A lot of that 1960s Batman. When it was on regular TV, it was syndicated for freaking. I mean, it only ran for 3 seasons, but it felt like you saw it all the time. It was like the original Star Trek.
When I was a kid, it used to be on I forget what cable channel it was. It was but it was at 5 in the morning, and I was like, man, this would be great to watch, but I'm not getting up at 5 in the morning to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that show was just, we talked about this in the Batman rankings. It was so campy and so caricature, but it was so great. That's what made it so great. He punches a bad guy and the entire freaking screen lights up with the word "pow." You just don't see that, and no other show ever did that. They made comic books real life. They in the most pure form, it was a comic book on TV, and that was just great.
Precisely, Robin.
Who was the character? Was it The Simpsons? Adam West played it. It was the mayor.
It was a Family Guy.
Family Guy. Yeah.
He was the mayor of Quahog, and it was
phenomenal. So good.
Which is what millennials will more remember him for.
Which is fine because he had a longer run on that show than the original Batman did.
That's
I know
crazy.
Brandon Warren was like, well, remembering him as the mayor is weird. Something about Steve Carlton with the twins, but
nobody
it was
messes with Adam Weed.
Yeah, but he had a longer run on that show. It's very okay for people to remember him like that.
It was a great role. Yeah.
Yeah, that. I don't know. It's always sad when Batman dies.
It was the first Batman to die, basically. When you're thinking about all of them that have represented the character.
And there was a photo that got on Reddit, and it got into my Twitter feed today. That
very cool.
Was hit the feels. Although I kind of object to the Ben Affleck Batman holding Adam West Batman in this photo.
Yeah,
I kind of have a problem with that.
And I was trying to pick out which ones were which, and I could but was the Christian Bale one even represented there?
Yeah.
Was he the?
He's on. So here I'll kind of try to explain.
Is he the one all the way to the right?
We'll tweet this out from our podcast account.
Sure.
Yeah, because a lot of people aren't watching this right now.
Going left to right, you got the Lego
Sure.
Batman. You've got Michael Keaton, and then I believe that's George Clooney.
I think so.
Why put Val Kilmer in there instead, or just shoot me? And then you have Christian Bale, and then you have the Ben Affleck Batman with Adam West.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Ben Affleck.
I'm guessing they put Ben Affleck Batman in there because he's
the most
technically the current Batman.
Sure.
But
I guess. Bale had the longest run. You could make an argument, but yeah, okay, that's fine. Ben
I still haven't seen the Lego Batman movie.
I've heard it's phenomenal.
I've heard it's good. I want to see it.
Panda Pete directed us to see it.
I was going to say Dark Knight is one of my favorite movies, just straight up.
Dark Knight is my favorite movie.
Really? And I thought Rises was
I might
good.
have a tattoo of something from that movie.
Did Ben give it to you?
No.
I can see drunk Giles. Just do it, Ben.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just put on the template.
No.
I'm Batman.
The progression of Bale's voice, and we talked about it on that show. That was just awful.
That's what turned me off on Bale's. The big boy voice.
Well, it can't be as bad as Bane.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Nobody knew who I was till I put on the mask. All right. That can probably wrap it up for us.
Sure.
Thanks to Dave again for joining us. Dave Schwartz, Channel 11. Please watch his shows.
Phenomenal guest.
Yes. Thanks to Tom for sitting in, or basically forcing us to have him here for his,
that's what
his
I
hot
did.
take.
That's
and running
I
the
did.
running the board so I don't screw it up.
And
Running the bear sounds funny.
Running the bear too.
I mean, Tom's in charge, so he can pretty much say when he wants to come on.
Oh no, I've asked many times, and I keep on getting the.
Yeah, I just don't reply. Ben goes, "It's been a while. You gonna reply to Tom?" Oh,
Yeah.
whoops. I'm just kidding. You can find Tom on the Twitters at Schreier3, and you can find all of his hot takes there.
My takes are reasonable. And lukewarm
Yeah, you
at
actually
best.
have good basketball takes, even though I don't really pay attention to basketball. I'll have to ask the basketball guys if your takes are good.
They love them. They do. Don't ask.
I'm gonna get Tim on the line.
Fight puck.
Tim and Zach.
Do you know Tim's hockey takes?
Yeah,
don't think
I've seen one or two.
He calls it fight puck
Yeah, I've seen that too.
I just ignore him because
for the better.
Yeah.
I like his basketball takes too.
Yeah.
You can find Ben on Twitter at Ben Remington. We'll be talking about rompers again today on Twitter as I sent him a
Indeed.
message. But you can find us tweeting jersey or Adidas leaks on the Twitters
Hopefully.
now because we do that. You can follow me on Twitter at Giles Farrell. Ben's Twitter name used to be Giles Sidekick, but I think he changed it today.
I did.
It's otherwise fine podcaster. Speaking of our fine podcast, you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, and Libsyn, and then the episode page at thezonecoverage.com. You can find our written works at zonecoverage.com. Also, rest in peace to Wild Extra. I was trying to look up an old article, and I saw that was gone. So
I don't know what happened to that. I don't know that it's.
I mean, I'm
gone,
sure it's
gone.
still there. It just
But there's
not
something
active.
there's something that happened with I think the link to it that's screwed up. We'll have to talk to.
Oh well, so yeah, that'll wrap it up for this week. We'll be back again next week, and we'll wrap up the Stanley Cup Final, and maybe we'll have a bit of wild news to talk about and go nuts over. And then we'll ramp it up to our expansion draft, NHL draft, free agency, all that fun stuff that comes with the first 3 weeks of the NHL offseason, and then nothing.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening. Give us an iTunes rating if you so choose, and we will talk to you again next week.
Later.
Mr. and Mrs. Batman, the dynamic duo may become a trio. The Queen of Diamonds aims high. Find out tomorrow whether she misses or misses. Same bat time, same bat channel. And hang on to your rice.
Our job is finished.